Why I regret moving into a nursing home. 6. Hard truths you must know. Elderly wisdom. At 82 years of age, I have accumulated a lifetime of experiences and insights. Yet amidst these many lessons, there remains one profound decision that casts a long shadow of regret over my later years. The choice to move into a nursing home. At the moment it was made, surrounded by the loving but perhaps misinformed encouragement of my family, it genuinely seemed like the most sensible path. They spoke of comprehensive care, unwavering comfort, and a life free from the burdens of managing a home, assurances I genuinely believed. But the stark reality that unfolded once I crossed that threshold bore little resemblance to the idyllic vision I had been painted. I understand that for many, whether considering it for themselves or for a cherished loved one, this option might appear as the epitome of safety, a practical solution to increasingly complex daily challenges, or perhaps even a directive from well-meaning advisors suggesting it would simplify life. However, before anyone takes that seemingly innocuous step, before the finality of such a move settles in, I feel an urgent compulsion to impart 6 crucial truths, lessons etched into my very being through the crucible of personal experience, truths I desperately wish someone had shared with me. The stark, unvarnished fact is that life within the walls of a nursing home transcends mere convenience. It is a transformative experience, altering the very fabric of one's existence. And perhaps most unsettling of all, once you embark upon this journey, the path back to your former life is fraught with far more obstacles than you could ever conceive. These insights, though perhaps unsettling, are absolutely vital, for they delve into aspects of life that are fundamentally altered, sometimes irrevocably, by this monumental decision. The first and arguably most profound regret I carry is the catastrophic loss of my independence. When I initially settled into my new, smaller room, past the unfamiliar faces and the regimented mealtimes, the most jarring realization was the absolute erosion of control over my own life. Before this move, my days were dictated by my own rhythms, a tapestry woven from personal choices. I decided the precise moment to greet the day, the hour to take my meals, and how each precious moment of my waking hours would be spent. The freedom to embark on a spontaneous walk, the simple pleasure of preparing a meal tailored to my own taste, or the quiet solace of losing myself in a cherished book within the comfort of my favorite armchair. These were not luxuries, but fundamental elements of my self-directed existence. Within the confines of the nursing home, however, this autonomy vanished with startling speed. Every aspect of my day became subservient to an institutional schedule, a rigid timetable not of my making. Breakfast arrived at a predetermined hour, regardless of whether my appetite stirred. Lights out was a fixed command, irrespective of my readiness for slumber. The desire to take a simple walk outside, once an immediate impulse, now necessitated a request for permission, often followed by an indefinite wait until a staff member was available to provide supervision. Even the most basic decisions, like selecting what to eat from a limited rotating menu or choosing my attire for the day, began to feel less like inherent rights and more like transient privileges, granted at the discretion of others. I vividly recall that first week, stirring awake in a bed that felt profoundly alien, a stark contrast to the familiar embrace of my own mattress. I stretched, my hand instinctively reaching for the well-worn novel I had been engrossed in back home. But as my gaze swept across the sterile, impersonal room, the crushing weight of the truth descended upon me. This was not my home. My beloved books, the comforting presence of my favorite chair, the myriad little comforts I had meticulously gathered over decades, they were all conspicuously absent. In their place stood stark, unadorned walls, a bed utterly devoid of personal connection, and an overwhelming, unshakable sensation. I was no longer the captain of my own ship. The most agonizing facet of this realization was the cruel irony that once this precious independence is relinquished, reclaiming it becomes an almost insurmountable feat. You don't fight it for long, instead you adapt because you must. The arguments about dinner choices cease. The impulsive requests for a walk transform into silent acquiescence. You learn begrudgingly to conform to their pervasive system. But in this insidious process of adaptation, a part of yourself, the essence of your individuality, begins to fray and dissipate. it forces a deeply unsettling introspection. Are you truly prepared to surrender the myriad small freedoms, the subtle nuances that imbue your life with its unique character? Because I can tell you with the certainty of lived experience, once those freedoms are gone, their absence will ache more profoundly than you could ever have conceived. My second profound regret centers on the isolating anguish of feeling forgotten. One of the most brutal realities that accompanies the transition into a nursing home is the creeping, undeniable understanding that the vibrant, bustling world outside continues its relentless forward march, seemingly indifferent to your absence. Upon my initial arrival, my family, with hearts full of genuine reassurance, promised frequent visits. And for a fleeting period, I believed them, and their actions mirrored their words. My daughter made her weekly pilgrimage, my grandchildren brought their youthful energy on weekends, and for a short while it felt as though the umbilical cord connecting me to my former life remained intact. But with the inexorable passage of months, the frequency of these cherished visits began to wane. My daughter's calls gradually replaced her physical presence. My grandchildren, enveloped by the demands of burgeoning school careers and nascent professional lives, found their time increasingly scarce. The holidays, once beacons of familial gathering, became particularly excruciating. Everyone pledged their arrival, yet invariably plans would mysteriously shift, unforeseen obstacles would arise at the 11th hour, and I would find myself with heartbreaking regularity seated alone in a communal room. My gaze, like those of other forlorn residents, would fixate on the door, a silent, desperate hope flickering within me that today would be the day someone, anyone, remembered us. It was never a question of their love diminishing, rather life, with its relentless cascade of responsibilities and distractions, simply interposed itself. When you are no longer a tangible, ever-present fixture in their daily routines, it becomes frighteningly easy for loved ones to fall into the complacent assumption that you are content, that you have adjusted seamlessly, that your need for connection has somehow lessened. But the painful truth is precisely the opposite. The longer one resides within the institutional embrace of a nursing home, the more susceptible one becomes to the insidious ease with which even the most cherished relationships can begin to fray, and the greater your silent, unarticulated need for their presence becomes. I recall a particularly poignant evening, sitting in the quiet solitude of my room, my hand hovering over my phone, engaged in a torturous internal debate about whether to dial my son. The last thing I wanted was to become a burden, to subtly remind him of my existence, a ghost waiting for a visit that might never materialize. With a heavy heart, I slowly lowered the phone. It was in that moment of profound stillness that the full weight of my new reality crashed over me. This was my life now, a seemingly endless vigil, watching the days bleed into one another, clinging to the faint hope that someone, somewhere would remember to include me, to acknowledge my continued presence in their world. This reality forces one to confront a stark question. Are you truly prepared for a loneliness that can penetrate to the very core of your being? Because irrespective of the depth of your family's affection, once you recede from their daily sight, it is undeniably easier than you could possibly imagine to slip, tragically, out of their immediate awareness and, in a sense, out of mind. My third profound regret encompasses the deeply unsettling experience of losing my sense of purpose. Before I made the move, I held a naive belief that I was merely altering my residential address. I gravely underestimated the extent to which I was simultaneously dismantling the very why of my existence. Back in my own home, my days were anchored by a myriad of responsibilities, structured routines, and a vibrant array of hobbies, all of which provided a compelling reason to rise each morning. Even the seemingly mundane tasks, the gentle act of watering my flourishing plants, the ritualistic brewing of my morning coffee, the comforting process of tidying my personal sanctuary. These small, recurring acts imbued my life with a profound and reassuring sense of purpose. But within the sterile, regimented environment of the nursing home, these cherished daily rituals simply vanished. Meals meticulously prepared appeared before me. The responsibility for cleaning my living space was assumed by others, and the plants, well, they were no longer mine to nurture, their vibrant life now tended by anonymous hands. Initially, I attempted to reframe this abrupt cessation of duties as a welcome respite, a blissful opportunity to finally relax, liberated from chores and responsibilities, free to simply rest. Yet, after a mere few weeks, an undeniable void began to yawn within me. The days stretched out, interminably long and featureless, devoid of any meaningful engagement beyond the passive act of waiting. This profound sense of ennui was not unique to me. I witnessed its insidious grip on fellow residents, individuals who had once radiated boundless energy, now reduced to spending their days in a static state, staring blankly, passively awaiting the relentless, yet curiously uneventful passage of time. I recall a man named George, an 84-year-old with hands calloused from a lifetime dedicated to carpentry. At home, he was perpetually engaged, his garage a buzzing hive of activity where he meticulously fixed broken things and lovingly crafted small projects. Here, however, his tools lay dormant, his projects non-existent, nothing for his creative spirit to construct or mend. I watched with a growing sense of sadness as this once vibrant craftsman slowly receded into himself, his once strong, skilled hands now tragically idle in his lap. "I feel useless," he confessed to me one day, his voice barely a whisper, and in that moment, an acute wave of understanding washed over me. I knew with chilling precision exactly what he meant. When the fundamental human need to care for something, to work towards a tangible goal, to contribute in some meaningful way, is systematically stripped away, life itself begins to lose its intrinsic meaning. The mind, starved of stimulation, begins to slow. The body, lacking purpose, inevitably follows suit. And before long, one begins to feel less like a unique individual, and more like just another name on an endless roster of residents, trapped in a place where time marches on relentlessly, yet nothing of true significance ever truly changes. Therefore, a critical question arises for anyone contemplating this path. What truly imbues your life with meaning? Because once you transition into this new environment, the act of finding purpose is not merely a matter of filling unoccupied hours. It transforms into an arduous, relentless struggle to cling desperately to those vital elements that make you feel truly alive, that remind you of your unique contribution to the world. My fourth profound regret is rooted in the alarming truth of declining health faster than expected. Prior to my move into the nursing home, I maintained a respectable level of vitality for my age. While I certainly wasn't contemplating marathons, I was perfectly capable of managing my own daily needs, enjoying regular walks, and preparing my own nutritious meals. My life was punctuated by a series of small, self-imposed routines that ensured I remained active and mobile. Weekly grocery shopping excursions, a consistent morning stretching regimen, even the simple act of navigating my own home served to keep my legs strong and my body supple. Yet, with the irrevocable step into the nursing home, a drastic transformation began. Initially, the change felt like a welcome reprieve, an opportunity to simply take it easy. Meals were conveniently delivered to my table, eliminating the need to stand and cook in the kitchen. If I required assistance, a simple push of a button would summon help. What I failed to grasp at the time, however, was the insidious correlation between the reduction in self-sufficiency and the alarming acceleration of my physical weakening. I began to move less, and almost imperceptibly my legs grew stiffer, my gait less confident. I found myself sitting for extended periods, far more than I ever had before. And before I truly comprehended the implications, the once simple act of rising from a chair transformed into a laborious chore. The musculature I had diligently maintained over decades began to atrophy with a speed that defied belief. And this alarming trend was not unique to my experience. I observed it with chilling regularity among my fellow residents. Individuals who had arrived walking confidently on their own 2 feet soon found themselves reliant on wheelchairs. Others who had previously managed every aspect of their lives independently now required assistance with tasks they had never struggled with before. It became a disturbing pattern. The more help we were provided, the more dependent we seemed to become, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of diminishing capability. I distinctly remember my neighbor Alice, an 81-year-old woman who exuded a vibrant, indomitable spirit upon her arrival. She made it a point to take daily walks around the facility, steadfastly insisting that a mere number would not dictate her pace of life. But after a few months, I noticed her walks becoming shorter, less frequent. Soon she was using a walker, then, tragically, a wheelchair. One day, her eyes met mine, filled with a profound sadness as she uttered words that echoed my own silent despair. I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I've aged 10 years in just a few months. And that precisely is the terrifying truth of it. When you cease to actively engage your body, when the demands of daily life no longer necessitate physical exertion, you inevitably begin to lose your physical capabilities. And in a nursing home environment, where every conceivable convenience is meticulously designed to render life effortless, it is terrifyingly easy to forget that movement is not merely about comfort or ease. It is, in a very fundamental sense, about survival itself. Had I possessed the foresight to understand the precipitous decline my strength would undergo, I would have fought with every fiber of my being to remain active, to keep moving, to push myself even on days when my motivation flagged. This insight compels a vital reflection. Will you truly retain the internal fortitude and unwavering motivation to keep your body robust and strong when every external stimulus, every aspect of your new environment, is meticulously engineered to make life as utterly effortless as possible? Because once that momentum is lost, once you surrender to the ease of inaction, the arduous task of regaining your physical vitality is immeasurably more challenging than you might ever anticipate. My fifth profound regret involves the relentless erosion of both privacy and dignity. Before my move, I failed to fully grasp the sheer magnitude of personal space and autonomy I would be forced to relinquish. In my own home, I commanded my sanctuary. I could close my bedroom door, retreating into welcome silence whenever my spirit yearned for it, conducting my life on terms dictated solely by myself. However, within the structured confines of a nursing home, privacy morphs into an unattainable luxury, a privilege one rarely retains. From the very moment of my arrival, a disquieting sense of being perpetually observed settled over me. Staff members, though diligent in their duties, moved in and out with a regularity that shattered any illusion of solitude. Scheduled room checks became commonplace, and shared communal spaces meant true alone time was an extreme rarity. Even the most intimate and fundamental acts, such as dressing oneself or using the bathroom, frequently necessitated the humbling request for assistance. I understood intellectually that they were simply performing their professional roles, yet it remains an arduous emotional struggle to accept help for activities you have executed independently with inherent dignity for your entire conscious life. I distinctly remember the profound struggle of my first week, grappling with the disorienting reality that I had to solicit permission for actions I had once performed without a second thought. The simple desire to take a shower now potentially involved an indeterminate wait until a staff member became available to facilitate the task. The need to use the restroom, once an immediate and private act, could now mean pressing a call button and enduring a wait far longer than comfort allowed. Even the fundamental choice of meals was severely restricted. If the day's menu held no appeal, one simply had to accept the limited options. And then there was the often unavoidable issue of roommates. Not everyone is fortunate enough to secure a private room, and the prospect of sharing one's most personal space with a stranger, an individual one did not choose, can be profoundly frustrating, even distressing. While I was blessed with a remarkably kind and considerate roommate, I frequently overheard harrowing accounts from others who were not so fortunate. Some found themselves living alongside individuals who were incessantly loud, others whose personal hygiene habits were profoundly unsettling, and still others whose cognitive impairments rendered peaceful sleep an absolute impossibility. And no matter how meticulously one attempts to infuse their allocated space with personal touches to make it feel like a genuine home, it remains fundamentally an institutional room, never truly and solely yours. Dignity, that fragile cornerstone of self-respect, is an exceptionally difficult thing to lose, and I simply did not comprehend the extent to which I would be compelled to surrender mine until I was already inextricably immersed in the experience. When staff members knock but often fail to await an answer before entering, when one is addressed as a patient rather than a fully autonomous person, when the intricate tapestry of one's daily routines is dictated by a rigid schedule crafted by others, not by oneself, these experiences inexorably alter you. You begin to feel less like the individual you have always known yourself to be, and more like a mere entry, another anonymous name on an impersonal list. This harsh truth necessitates a profound question for anyone contemplating such a move. Are you truly prepared, deep within your core, to relinquish the invaluable privacy and personal control that have defined your entire life? Because once these foundational elements are gone, once they are surrendered to the demands of an institutional setting, their reclamation becomes an arduous and often futile endeavor. My sixth and final yet profoundly significant regret is the chilling realization that it is infinitely harder to leave than you think. When I initially crossed the threshold of the nursing home, I clung to the comforting but ultimately illusory belief that my stay would be temporary. I envisioned it as an experimental phase. I would settle in, observe how things transpired, and if the experience proved unsatisfactory, I could simply return home. The stark reality that I utterly failed to grasp was the formidable array of obstacles that would materialize, making departure an almost impossible undertaking once I was entrenched within the system. At first glance, the idea of leaving seemed straightforward. If I disliked it, I'd just go back to my house. But my house in my absence had begun its own slow process of transformation. It sat empty, gradually accumulating a sense of disuse, and the logistical complexities of maintaining it from a distance became a burgeoning source of stress. My children, with well-intentioned but perhaps premature foresight, had already initiated changes, selling possessions they believed I would no longer require, even beginning to entertain the idea of renting out the property. When I tentatively broached the subject of returning, their responses were laden with hesitation, their voices tinged with concern. "Are you truly confident you can manage independently, Mother?" they'd ask. "Or wouldn't it be far safer for you to remain here where help is always at hand? We only desire what is genuinely best for you." This well-meaning but ultimately disempowering dialogue subtly chipped away at my resolve. And then there was the undeniable, unforgiving reality of my physical decline. After months of residing in an environment where I was not required to cook, to clean, or even to exert myself by walking any significant distance, my physical strength had predictably diminished. The independence I had once cherished, the robust self-sufficiency that had defined my life, had begun its insidious erosion, rendering the very notion of returning home a far more formidable challenge than I could have ever conceived. I found my confidence in my ability to live alone severely shaken, a pervasive fear that acted as an invisible yet incredibly potent barrier, keeping me tethered to the nursing home. I encountered numerous other residents who mirrored my experience, individuals who, like me, had entered with the firm intention of a short trial stay, only to discover with mounting despair that leaving was an exponentially more complex endeavor than they had ever imagined. The longer one resides within these walls, the more deeply entrenched one becomes, and the more challenging it is to readjust to the rhythms and demands of life outside. For some, the option of returning home vanished entirely, their homes sold, their life savings depleted by the unrelenting costs of care. For them, there was quite literally no going back. This is the crucial, unspoken truth that remains hidden until it's too late. Moving in feels like a decision that can be reversed at will, but for the vast majority, it is anything but. The nursing home, with its pervasive routines and comforting, yet ultimately confining familiarity, gradually expands to consume one's entire world. And before one fully grasps the insidious transformation, the vibrant external life you once knew, the freedom and choices you once exercised, begin to recede into the realm of distant, almost mythical memory. Therefore, a most solemn consideration must be made. Are you truly prepared for the profound possibility that once you enter, the path to leaving might not be as simple, as accessible, or as easily navigated as you currently perceive? Because once you settle into this new existence, the myriad barriers to departure, be they financial, physical, or profoundly emotional, can prove to be far more overwhelming, far more insurmountable than you could possibly expect. Looking back now with the clarity that only hindsight provides, I hold no regret for the natural process of growing older, for the accumulation of years that brings wisdom and perspective. My deepest regret lies squarely in the unwavering belief that a nursing home represented my sole viable option. I entered its doors with the earnest expectation of finding enhanced comfort, unwavering safety, and an overall improvement in my quality of life. What I discovered instead was a pervasive world that, with each passing day, systematically stripped away the very essence of my being, my cherished independence, my fundamental right to privacy, my crucial sense of purpose, and ultimately, even my most intrinsic sense of self. Does this imply that all nursing homes are inherently detrimental? Not necessarily. There are indeed individuals whose complex care needs genuinely necessitate the specialized support and supervision such facilities provide. However, before anyone commits to such a life-altering decision, I implore you to engage in a profound and meticulous deliberation about the profound sacrifices you are poised to make. Because once that irrevocable step is taken, once you reside within those institutional confines, life as you have known it will be forever altered. If I were granted the miraculous opportunity to rewind time, to navigate this pivotal juncture once more, I would summon every ounce of my remaining strength to fight with renewed vigor to remain within the sanctuary of my own home. I would tirelessly explore every conceivable alternative to procure the necessary assistance without surrendering my precious freedom. I would insist on an exhaustive, brutally honest assessment of my true needs, ensuring beyond a shadow of a doubt that such a permanent transition was absolutely, unequivocally essential before committing to a move of such monumental finality. And to anyone currently standing at this crossroads, grappling with this profound decision, I sincerely hope you will invest the necessary time for deep, introspective questioning. Ask yourself with absolute candor, is this choice truly, unequivocally, what is best for me, for my spirit, for my future? Or is it merely the path of least resistance, the option that, at this moment, simply appears to be the easiest? Because the life you possess today, the intricate tapestry of your routines, the invaluable gift of your independence, the boundless power of your choices, these are treasures beyond measure, worth clinging to, worth fighting for as long as your spirit and body allow. Your journey is uniquely yours, and the wisdom to protect its essence resides within you.